I welcome you all. In this video, I'm going to talk about the design of Cotter joint. So this figure shows the cut section of Cotter joint. It has three parts. First is a socket, which is shown by this green color. Second one is spigot, which is shown by this blue color. And third one is Cotter, which is shown by orange color. This socket has one end having hollow portion, or the one end of the socket has a hole. So this is a hollow portion, or it has hole. In this hollow portion or hole, the spigot is inserted, and this socket and spigot has a slot through which Cotter is inserted. Now this Cotter has one side straight and one side having taper. So taper of magnitude 1 in 32 is provided on this one side of Cotter, and the taper is provided on only one side of Cotter just to fit this Cotter in socket and spigot slot tightly. For that purpose, on only one side taper is provided. If this Cotter is hammered from the top, it will get jammed into socket and spigot by wedge action, and to disassemble this Cotter joint, just we have to hit this Cotter from this opposite end by using hammer. So with the help of wedge action, we can connect this socket and spigot along with the Cotter to get the Cotter joint. So assembly and disassembly is very easy, and it helps to form the Cotter joint, and thus the wedge action is necessary, and it is provided by the taper provided on one side of Cotter. Now let us look at a very important aspect of this Cotter joint. So as I told you, the slot is present in both socket and this spigot. If you look at this slot in the socket, so these two lines indicates the start of slot in this socket. This two line indicates the start of slot in the socket, and these two lines indicates the end of slot in the socket. Okay, so these two lines indicates start of slot, and these two lines indicates end of slot in the socket. If you look at the contact between this orange color Cotter and this green color socket, so at this portion there is no contact between the slot and Cotter. So here you can see the clearance between slot and Cotter for socket. So there is a clearance between socket surface and Cotter, and this clearance is generally provided 1.5 to 3 mm. But on the opposite hand, here there is a contact between Cotter and socket slot. So here you can see the surface to surface contact between this Cotter and end of slot of socket. So this indicates that the Cotter is in contact with the socket on only one side, and it has clearance on the other side. The same thing is done for the spigot. So this blue color line indicates the start of slot in the spigot, and this line indicates the end of slot in the spigot. Now if you look at surface contact between Cotter and spigot, the Cotter is in contact with this left side surface of slot of spigot, but it is not in contact with this surface of spigot slot. So Cotter is in contact with the left side portion of slot, but it is not in contact with the right side end of slot. So this clearance is generally provided of magnitude 1.5 to 3 mm. And if you look at both socket and spigot, the clearance is provided on the socket and Cotter on the left side, and on the spigot clearance is provided between the Cotter and spigot on the right side. So this is done to avoid the jamming of Cotter in socket and spigot. Okay, so by providing the clearance left side on the socket and right side on the spigot, it avoids the jamming of Cotter in the Cotter joint. So just reason of this providing the clearance here between Cotter and spigot, and here between socket, slot and Cotter, is to avoid the jamming of Cotter in this joint. Now let us talk about from the use and application point of this Cotter joint. So this is the rod, one rod of this Cotter joint, and this is the another rod of this Cotter joint. Okay, so this Cotter joint is used to connect these two rods which are subjected to either tensile load or compressive load, and which is uniaxial. Okay, so both these tensile or compressive loads applied on this both the rods are uniaxial, and to connect such two rods this Cotter joint is used. Now let us talk about its use in detail. So first point is Cotter joint is used to connect the two coaxial rods which are subjected to either axial tensile or axial compressive force. That means this Cotter joint is used to connect these two rods which are coaxial and which are subjected to either axial tensile or axial compressive force. Second point is very important. It is not used for connecting shafts that rotate and transmit the torque. That means just like a knuckle joint, this Cotter joint is not used to transfer the torque. That means these two rods will not rotate, or this Cotter joint is not used to connect the two rotating shafts. Then let us talk about the applications. The first application is joint between the piston rod and the crosshead of steam engine. Second is joint between the slide spindle and the fork of the valve mechanism. Third one is joint between the piston rod and the Taylor pump rod. And fourth application is foundation bolt. So these are the four applications of this Cotter joint, and these are the two uses of this Cotter joints. Now let us gain more insights into the Cotter joint with the help of these 3D diagrams. So as I told you, this is a rod of one end rod and this is the second end rod, and this Cotter joint is used to connect these two coaxial rods. So in this figure you can see that this is a first rod, left hand side rod, which is the integral part of this socket, and this is the right hand side rod, that is this rod, which is the integral part of this spigot. And these two rods which are coaxial are connected by with the help of Cotter joint. So this is a socket which looks like this. Okay, so this socket has one end having hollow portion, or it has hole which can be seen in this cut section. So this socket, which is shown by green color, it has a hollow portion or hole so that the spigot can be inserted into this socket. So this is a socket and one end has hollow portion or hole in which this spigot can be inserted. Along with this socket has a slot. So in this slot the Cotter is inserted. Similarly, this is a spigot. This spigot is inserted into the hollow portion of this socket. It has also a slot which is produced in throughout. This slot helps to accommodate this Cotter. Now to assemble this spigot is inserted into the hollow portion of socket, and both socket and spigot has slots, and through these common slots this Cotter, which is having taper on one side, is inserted. So in this way this Cotter joint is assembled. This socket and spigot has additional some geometrical features, like this is a collar of socket, so we call it as a socket collar. It has certain diameter, and also similar to the socket, the spigot as also having collar. So the collar diameter of spigot and collar diameter of socket is different. Okay, and this Cotter, as it is having one side taper, so its width at the bottom is less and width at the top is more. So in case of Cotter we have to consider the mean width of Cotter, that is along this line. Whatever the width of Cotter is there, that we have to consider as a mean width.